Do they drive you crazy? If you said yes, then welcome to the club. So many English learners are having a hard time memorizing phrasal verbs, so you're not alone. I've also been there. When I moved to the United States, I would get so frustrated when I talked to native speakers because they use so many phrasal verbs and I simply couldn't understand them. I tried to avoid using phrasal verbs at first, so I would use another word instead. For example, instead of saying, I don't want to put up with rude behavior, I would say, I don't want to tolerate rude behavior, which is pretty much the same thing. But native speakers would tell me that my English sounded too proper, too formal, and kind of serious. So, not natural. But that's how I was taught at school. But it's not how native speakers really talk. That's the problem. I think that traditional schools and textbooks don't really prepare you for real life. The truth is, guys, phrasal verbs are extremely common in everyday spoken English. So if you want to become fluent in English, if you want to be able to understand native speakers better, if you want to communicate successfully and sound more natural when you speak English, then you have to learn phrasal verbs. But how, right? How do you learn them? They're so tricky to understand and memorize because it's often hard to guess the meaning of each expression from the words themselves. And it's really easy to get confused by a number of phrasal verbs that are very similar. Also, many phrasal verbs have multiple meanings. So what's the best way to learn phrasal verbs so that you understand and remember them? Well, to answer this question, I wanted to think about how native speakers learn phrasal verbs. Here's an example from my life. I live in the United States and I have 2 kids. They were born here, okay? So they don't learn phrasal verbs the way you learn them at school. But every morning when I get my kids ready for daycare and school and I say, hey guys, time to get dressed. Alexandra, put your shoes on. Max, put your jacket on. Put on your hat, etc. So they know what to do. They know naturally that put up, get off, get by expression from the words you learned them at school. But every morning when I get my kids ready for daycare and school and I say, hey guys, time to get dressed. Alexandra, put your shoes on. Max, put your jacket on. Put on your hat, etc. So they know what to do. They know naturally that put on something in that context means to move something that you wear onto your body, right? So they learn this phrasal verb naturally because they have context and what else? And a lot of repetition, right? Because they hear me saying it all the time. So, I believe the best way to learn phrasal verbs is to learn them naturally, in context, with a lot of repetition. The best way to learn phrasal verbs is to learn them naturally, in context, with a lot of repetition. You might think that it's hard to have the same experience if you don't live in an English-speaking country. Hard to have this and a lot of repetition, right? Because they hear me saying it all the time. So, I believe the best way to learn phrasal verbs is to learn them naturally, in context, with a lot of repetition. The best way to learn phrasal verbs is to learn them naturally, in context, with a lot of repetition. You might think that it's hard to have the same experience if you don't live in an English-speaking country. Well, that's why I've created the Phrasal Verbs in Conversations and Stories course. Everyone who's been waiting for it can go and register for it right now. The link is in my bio. You will learn 100 common phrasal verbs in context through simple everyday conversations and simple video stories. You'll learn these phrasal verbs naturally, and it's gonna be fun too. I worked really hard on the video clips because I really wanted you to enjoy the process. I think you'll have fun learning, especially through the video stories that I've created. It's like watching very short movies, and everyone loves watching movies, right? Of course, you're going to get a lot of practice, which includes some short quizzes, interesting visualization exercises, some short writing exercises, and speaking practice, where I ask you to record yourself. I've also applied a lot of effective memorization techniques while working on this course. I've done a lot of research on how our brain works and how we memorize things. And I've learned a lot of powerful techniques, and I built them into the course so you can learn and retain the information. As a bonus, you're gonna get my awesome ebook. It has a lot of memorable images to help you memorize these phrasal verbs easily. This course, without a doubt, will help you learn the 100 common phrasal verbs easily and use them in your own English. I believe this course will make you a more independent and effective English learner. All the memorization strategies and techniques that you're going to discover in the course, you can apply to your future language learning.